Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of our show Tiebreak. I'm Aaron Kumar and I'm delighted to say that once again I'm joined by my good friend, the editor of Cricket World, John Pennington. John, how are you today?
Very well, Aaron, how are you?
Yeah, very good, John. There's been quite a lot happening, hasn't there, in the world of cricket. Obviously, since we spoke last Saturday, Australia have gone on to have, quite a heavy defeat they suffered at the hands of Pakistan in Dubai. Tell us a bit more about that, JP.
Yeah, it's a very heavy defeat. 221 runs was the final margin. Yunus Khan, in the form of his life, he'd never scored 100 against Australia prior to sort of this time last week, and he got two in that game, and he's since gone on to score a big double. So really riding on the back of his form. They've obviously produced pitchers that aren't giving Australia any help. Mitchell Johnson and his colleagues are not getting anything out of it, and Pakistan's spinners are really exposing Australia's struggles against spin bowling, and it's not the likes of Saeed Ajmal or Abdur Rahman, the really experienced players. It's these less experienced, slightly younger players in Zulfikar Babar and Yasir Shah who are producing the goods, which is very, very encouraging for Pakistan. But also today we've seen the Pacers do a super job in the second test. Rahat Ali and Imran Khan, no relation to the great all-rounder of the 70s and 80s. They've had a superb day. So, really encouraging signs for Pakistan, but plenty to work on for Australia.
Absolutely, JP. And as you say, Australia is so far behind in this game that it's going to be very, very difficult to see them turning around. One thing I'd like to pick on, JP, which I thought was quite nice to see, I mean, at the end of a test match, you often see a player from each team, usually someone's had a bit of success, coming out and speaking in the press conference. But Clark at the end of day one, just like he did at the end of day four in the first test, came out and faced the media. And I thought it was quite nice to see that from a captain, isn't it? Even when they're behind in the game, kind of fronting up and speaking to the media like that.
Sorry, I missed most of that, and it's just something that Michael Clark had said at the end of day one. I didn't.
Oh, sorry, JP. I just said that.
Sorry.
Yeah, even though they had such a bad day on day one, Australia, just like they did on day four in the first test, it was quite nice to see that Clark was the person who came and faced the media and faced the press conference and fronted up and took responsibility. It's quite rare that you see a captain do that during a test match. I thought it was quite nice to see, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else he could have done, really, because it was pretty obvious that he didn't have the firepower to bowl them out, and he was a little bit short of ideas, but he tried some sort of funky fields, and he was a very straight hit, which you don't see very often. A lot of people say it's an illegal position. Well, it's not. It's just something you don't see very often. So he did try everything, but obviously the way the unit is batting, this bowler's on top form as well. I don't think many teams in the world would have got them out for much less than 400. They were on top form.
Absolutely. So we'll definitely keep you posted on that. And I think we touched on I think it would be good to have some positive news, wouldn't it, with regards to, I know India, West Indies, there's a few rumblings that's been going on. Obviously the BCCI have sent that letter out today to the West Indies board. As you say, I think that story's going to run, but at least we've got a series, haven't we, to look forward to tomorrow, the ODI between India and Sri Lanka. That promises to be a good series, isn't it, JP?
Yeah, it'd be nice to sort of be talking about cricket being played on the field in India. India are obviously resting in their Dhoni, so that Kohli gets a chance to lead. But Sri Lanka made a few changes as well, so they've got a few young players to look out for. So yeah, it should be. It's always interesting. It's always competitive when these two teams meet. Of course, and they've played in the 2011 World Cup final, played in the 2020 World Cup final earlier this year. So no shortage of history between them. But should be a really good series. I think it might be quite close, but India should be too strong for me.
Okay, and as you say, a repeat of the T20 World Cup final and the 50 over World Cup final as well. So plenty of recent history between these two sides, and it promises to be an exciting series.
Certainly does. So should we move on to other sport, Aaron? And we could have talked briefly, I think, last week about the baseball. Just bring us up to date with what's been happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for our American fans and fans of baseball out there, we were talking about the World Series last week, and just to let you know that the San Francisco Giants managed to win the 7-match series. So they are the World Series champions. They beat the Kansas Royals, and they won the series 4-3. And it's quite interesting, JP, that they actually haven't won the title since 1954, but since then they've now won it 3 times in the last 5 years. So pretty impressive run that they're on at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting how sometimes that happens, isn't it? You go a long time without winning, and then once you work out how to win, or you get a good team of players or whatever together, you can actually go on quite a good run. So you want to think, well, what was all the fuss about?
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess it confirms the old adage, doesn't it, that the winning's a habit and losing's a habit as well. So I guess they're really living up to that.
So so well played to San Francisco, and we'll say well played to a few more players now. So looking ahead, looking at tennis, and we understand that the lineup, if you like, for the World Tour Finals is now complete with Nishikori and Raonic sort of completing things.
That's correct, JP. Actually, because Raonic has actually had some a bad run of recent form lately, and it did put his place in jeopardy. If you asked me at Wimbledon, I'd have said he's pretty much a shoo-in to make his first World Tour Finals, but he put in a very good performance. He had to beat Federer to have any chance of qualifying, and he'd never beaten him in 6 previous attempts, but played really well, beat Federer 7-6, 7-5, and then needed Ferrer to not make the final for him to have a chance, but Nishikori took care of that. Nishikori edged out Ferrer in a very good 3-setter, so Nishikori and Raonic now make up the last 2 spots in London. It promises to be a good tournament. Obviously, Murray's looking as if he's close to his best again. I mean, obviously he's won 3 titles, won another title last Sunday, again against Robredo, and again saving 5 championship points, which is quite remarkable. Still, you could say tiredness may have played a part yesterday. He has played a lot of tennis, but to me he still looks a little bit behind the Djokovic's and the Federers, and we saw that last night. He fell a little bit short against Djokovic, but I think it'd be great for him to play against these top 8 guys in the world. He hasn't consistently been able to play the top 10 guys this year for one reason or another, and I think it'll really, either he can have a good run here or it'll set him up nicely for the start of next year.
And do we know the draw yet, the groups, or is that going to be sort of finalised after the weekend?
Yeah, the groups are coming out on Monday, JP, so we should have a good idea. We know that Federer and Djokovic will be in 2 separate groups, but other than that, it's pretty much in the lap of the gods. But I mean, if you look at the 8 that we've got there, I mean, there's not going to be any easy matches at all. And with all due respect to Ferrer, and he's a great player, and he's done very well over the years. But he's been the kind of player who takes care of the guys who are ranked below him. But you put him up against a Murray or a Federer. I mean, I think he's got a 10-0 losing record to Federer, which is quite phenomenal for someone who's been a top 4 player. He does tend to struggle against these sort of the elite players, and what it does. I don't want to say weaken, but it does give opportunities in that group. But whereas if you look at guys like Raonic and Nishikori, guys who've got firepower, even Cilic, they're not going to be anyone can beat anyone now in looking at that tournament. I think that makes for a very exciting tournament now.
Yeah, no, it's going to be one to look forward to. And Federer's defeat, that sort of puts his chances of finishing the year at number 1 at risk, doesn't it?
It does. But the one thing he's got up his sleeve, JP, is the fact that Switzerland are in the Davis Cup final, and again they'll play France. And there are now, that never used to be the case, but there are now some ranking points available for the Davis Cup final. And of course, Serbia were in the Davis Cup final last year, and obviously they're not this year. So Djokovic has got some points coming off. I think I'm right in saying though that with that loss, assuming Djokovic was to go on and win in Paris, and he's probably the favourite to do so now, if Djokovic wins all 3 of his round robin matches in London, he's got the world number 1 sign up. So it's kind of in Djokovic's hands now, you'd think. But,
good stuff, yeah, looking forward to that one already. Start of the basketball season, tell us about that.
Yeah, just a little bit about basketball season, JP. Obviously it's gotten underway, and the Miami Heat, a lot of attention was going to be on them because obviously LeBron James, the big star, all the big talk was about LeBron going back to Cleveland this year, but Miami Heat just played the 1 game so far on Wednesday night, and they had quite a convincing win against the Washington Wizards. They beat them sort of fairly comfortably. And then Thursday night, we had one of the most anticipated comebacks of all time, LeBron James in Cleveland, playing. It was like the homecoming, the crowd was completely packed, playing the New York Knicks, who, they've got Carmelo Anthony, who's also a world-class player, but the New York Knicks have really failed to kind of live up to their potential for the last few years. So many people were expecting this to be a fairly sort of comfortable home win for LeBron and Cleveland on LeBron's return, but it didn't work out that way, JP, and actually New York Knicks, they turned them over, and LeBron did not have a good game at all. He was not himself, and he gave away a lot of turnovers, and New York won that 95-90. But Cleveland played again last night, and they played in Chicago against the Chicago Bulls, which was a very tough prospect, and actually the game finishes a tie, which meant it went into overtime, and actually Cleveland ended up winning that. So it's not, it's a bit of a mixed start for LeBron, but it's early stages. It would be interesting to kind of keep our eye on that and see how the season unfolds.
Yeah, want to keep an eye on, certainly.
So JP, there's been obviously a lot of sport happening around the world, and I know there's been a bit going on on the rugby field as well. JP, tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, obviously we're now we're into November, so we have lots of refer to the November internationals or the end of year internationals, or the autumn internationals. They seem to spread out longer each year, but obviously this is the final opportunity before next year's World Cup in England and Wales for the Southern Hemisphere teams, your South Africas, your New Zealands, your Australians, to get some match practice against teams, your England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland. So really, really important that it all gets, well, it has sort of gone well already. So we had the Japan playing the New Zealand Maori, but New Zealand actually play the United States of America tonight. They're playing at Chicago Soldier Field, and it's going to break all the records for biggest ever rugby crowd in the United States. Because obviously New Zealand will win because they're ranked so far ahead of the United States, but it's a great way of boosting the sports profile in America and bringing it to a sort of more global audience. So it's fantastic for that. You've got Australia taking on the Barbarians later on. That's sort of like an all-star team. That's also exciting to watch them play as well. It really kicks off next weekend when we've got, I think, Australia playing Wales. Well, that's probably the most significant game, because Australia, Wales and England in the same World Cup group next year. So really interesting game there. But we are, really getting into that stage of the international season now where these games are absolutely vital in terms of teams really getting their combinations together ready for next year's World Cup, because there aren't an awful lot of games left now, so the World Cup countdown is well and truly on.
Fantastic, JP. And I know it's early stages, JP, but is it too early to maybe pick who you think is going to go all the way in the World Cup in the rugby next year, or any idea, or do you need to see a bit more?
Sorry, say again?
I know it's a bit of a way away till next year, but is it too early to kind of pick who you think's a likely team to go all the way in the Rugby World Cup?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear the question. I was guessing I'll pick some teams out who to watch for the World Cup. Certainly New Zealand, you can't argue with them. They are the reigning world champions. They've never won a World Cup outside of New Zealand. That's going to be the question mark. I think Wales should go well, but they are in that very, very tough group with Australia and England. They haven't beaten Australia in 8 attempts, and if they don't beat them this time around, then I think they could struggle to get out of that group. England tend to have the edge over them when it comes to World Cup encounters. So certainly New Zealand, certainly England, and possibly South Africa as an outside bet as well. They have a very strong World Cup record as well. So they would be my sort of three at this stage. But it's very early days. Things will change, but those three would be, for me, the favourites.
Fantastic. Certainly a tournament to look forward to, and we've got obviously a lot of rugby before then to look forward to as well. And JP, just finally, I know that there's the US Grand Prix this weekend, and it's a new circuit, I believe, in Austin. Tell us your thoughts ahead of that, JP.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very likely that Mercedes doesn't win. I mean, I was watching some of the practice sessions, the highlights this morning, and they're a second clear of everybody else. It really does look like, unless there's a reliability issue and I don't think it's going to rain, and you are looking at either Hamilton or Rosberg to win, and we'll have a clearer picture of where exactly they are in relation to each other after qualifying later today. Obviously, one of the major stories that's dominating Formula 1 at the moment is the fact that you've got two teams who aren't there because they've pretty much gone into administration. So a lot of debate at the moment about, are the costs too high? Is it too much weighted in favour of the big teams? And are we looking at possibly having 3-car teams next season? So lots of talk about what's happening off the track and not so much about what's happening on the track. But that usually produces a good Grand Prix, the Circuit of Americas out there in Austin. So let's hope for an entertaining weekend on the track, and then we can talk about what's going to happen next year and beyond once the season's over.
Absolutely. So, that's just about it, guys. Plenty to look forward to, and plenty that's been going on in the world of sport. JP, once again, thank you so much for your time today.
Not a problem. Pleasure as ever.
And guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to give us a follow on at Tie Break Sports, and we'll see you all again soon.